So it's 6:45. Let's get started. We have a lovely full agenda as usual on these our Scarborough evenings. So welcome everyone. My name is Jim Fott. I'm a director on the board of Scarborough Community Renewal Organization. And just before we get started, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement, and then we'll get into, we have an agenda that I'll go over as soon as we finish with some of the preliminary introductions. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we take this moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples that call the nations home. Please join me in the moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own ways, move forward in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And this is one of the main recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for us to actually do these land acknowledgements so that we can start the discussion. So thank you for acknowledging that. So tonight, 6:45 to 7, we're going to have a highlight. We have Michael Ellis. I'll introduce him in a moment. And then at 7 tonight, spotlight speaker, we have Barbara Dixon, and very pleased to have you here, Barbara. We'll do an introduction for you at 7. So Barbara, we have about 35 minutes for you for your presentation or speech. And then from 7:35 to about 10 to 8, we have a Q&A. So I'll be moderating all of that so that we can keep the agenda moving tonight. One thing I wanted to start with, though, is who is SCRO? Because there are some people on here who may not understand what SCRO is. So the Scarborough Community Renewal Organization is committed to creating and revitalizing bold visions to renew Scarborough. Working collaboratively through inspired action and learning, SCRO is a multi-stakeholder group of community volunteers, and there's a few on here tonight, seeking to renew Scarborough by advocating for economic development, better suburban planning, enhanced natural environment, social development, and health promotion, arts, and culture. We have 7 working committees working hard right now to better Scarborough. So if you've obviously come through scro.ca, the website, so please take time to review what's on that website and also take time to sign up as a member. We'll remind you of that before the evening's out too. It would be helpful for that. So to start off the evening, we're going to have just a little highlight speaker. We have Mike Ellis and the Robbie. And, I've never heard of the Robbie, Mike, so I'm going to be very interested to hear about this. So Mike, volunteering has come very naturally to Mike. His parents volunteered in various organizations. He has himself been volunteering in community and sports organizations for over 50 years. You don't look that old, Mike. When his son took to soccer, Mike got involved, and as so often happens when your children get involved in sports and things like that, one thing leads to another. After some years of active involvement, he took to the role of chair, Robbie Soccer Festival and International Tournament, a position he's held for 11 years. Mike's first home was in Scarborough in the farming wilderness at what was at Lawrence Avenue in Victoria Park, back when Lawrence did not cross Don Valley. Victoria Park was Dawes Road. Since 1988, Mike has called Guildwood Village home. That's where I live, Mike. And Mike worked in a variety of planning activities in the private and public sectors, latterly with Public Works Canada. He's now happily retired and enjoying the accolades that come with being Robbie past chair. So over to you, Mike, just to tell us about the Robbie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And I just want to say thank you also to Marg for inviting me to be here this evening. And I want to thank you, Marg, for all the work that you've done over the years in trying to build our Scarborough community. On the call this evening is Ron Smale, who is now the chair of the Robbie. There may be a couple of other members who have joined. So I have a community story for you this evening, and it's a success with some staying power. Imagine this. You and some friends are part of a fast-growing community, Scarborough, in the mid-60s. You're passionate for an interest. Let's say it's soccer. So you ask yourselves, what can we do to elevate our soccer in our community? Well, you look at the success of the Timmy Tyke hockey tournament and think, well, maybe they could do something similar. And you also think that maybe your soccer event could support a need of some kind in the community. This group of soccer buddies, all men, of course, after all, it was the 1960s, gathered at the home of John Wims. They tossed around some ideas and eventually decided to call their event a festival to celebrate all that was good about soccer and to encourage sportsmanship. They still had work to do on the community aspect, though. At one point, one of the guys asked John what the sound was that they'd been hearing from upstairs throughout the evening. So John trooped them upstairs and introduced them to John's wife, Rosalie, and their 3-year-old son, Robbie. They explained that Robbie was living with cystic fibrosis, a genetic disorder affecting lungs and digestion. And the sound that they heard was Rosalie clapping Robbie's chest, tapping for hours each day to break up the mucus on his lungs in order to help him breathe. In the mid-60s, CF was pretty much a mystery. In the mid-60s, children born with CF usually died before starting school. Well, bingo, they found their community needs, cystic fibrosis. And after the first event in 1967, it became known as the Robbie. The first event featured 8 teams, each paying a princely sum of $10 to enter. And after passing a tin can along the sidelines and after expenses, they donated to Cystic Fibrosis Canada $60.52. Something else remarkable happened that first year. The referees all volunteered. Imagine that. Game officials volunteering to be abused by players, coaches, and spectators alike. Well, what's become of that little Scarborough tournament? Since 1967, something like 15,000 teams and 250,000 players have participated. Teams have come from far and wide: Egypt, Hong Kong, Uruguay, Serbia, the UK, all across Canada, and half the United States. In 2019, the last year of the event, because of COVID, over 400 teams, both boys and girls, participated. There were about 550 games and 1,100 referee assignments. Still, volunteer referees. In addition, there were another 100 or so volunteers in essential roles, many from Scarborough soccer clubs. The 2019 event donated $70,000, bringing total donations over the years to about $2 million, about half of which came from fees foregone by the referees. The Robbies received many accolades and honors over the years, including the Scarborough Walk of Fame, the Canada Soccer Hall of Fame, and the CF Canada Most Promising Area of New Research Award. And an interesting bit of trivia, perhaps, the Robbie is likely the only youth soccer event that is named in song. I'm going to bring up a screen here, I hope. And show you, has something come up? Has anything come up?
No.
No, okay. Well, it's the Bare Naked Ladies. Their song, the 1 week, ends with the line, Birchmount Stadium, home of the Robbie. The Robbie Soccer Festival is held on the last weekend of June. I'm just going to get rid of something I brought up on my screen that didn't get through to you. The last weekend of June, it's 2 one-day events, no scores, no standings, for under 8 to under 12 boys and girls. And a feature of the event is the parade of teams led by a piper, and after which we take a few moments to explain what the Robbie is about, to promote soccer, and to talk a little bit about cystic fibrosis. The international tournament with up to 160 teams runs Canada Day weekend. If form holds true this year, about 40 of those teams will come from beyond the GTA. And the tourney culminates in final games at Birchmount Stadium, as well as a celebrity game next year, organized by Dwayne DiRosario, our honorary chair. Of course, everything is COVID dependent. And what's the economic impact of the Robbie? Well, the 25,000 annual participants, players, coaches, and spectators, inject about $4.7 million into the economy, according to Tourism Toronto, contributing to 1,300 direct and indirect jobs, equivalent to 37 FTEs. Quite an accomplishment. I'm going to spend a few minutes now talking about cystic fibrosis. CF is the most common fatal genetic disease affecting Canadian children and young adults. At present, there is no cure. CF mainly affects digestion in the lungs. The persistence and ongoing infection in the lungs and the loss of lung function will eventually lead to death in the majority of people with CF. It's estimated that 1 in every 3,600 children born in Canada has CF. Approximately 1 in 25 Canadians carry an abnormal version of the gene responsible for CF. Carriers do not have cystic fibrosis, nor do they exhibit any of the symptoms of the disease. The defective gene causing CF was discovered and identified in Toronto in 1989. When the Robbie began, most children with CF died before starting school. There were no CF clinics for adults. The median survival age is now in the mid-50s. Interestingly, 10 years more than in the US, a testament, I think, to the benefits of our Canadian healthcare system. Of the Canadians with CF who died in the last 3 years, half were under the age of 34. Robbie Wims himself succumbed in 1996 at the age of 33, remarkable at the time. Modulator drugs have been developed in recent years. Trikafta was approved for use in Canada in June this year for persons 12 and older. Trikafta targets the genetic defects involved in the most common forms of CF. It's a life-extending treatment for up to 90% of those who live with this disease. It's not a cure, and the long-term effects are yet to be seen, but for many who have been using this drug for a while, it is truly life-changing, restoring lung function and making it possible for many with CF to imagine a future for themselves. Annual cost is $300,000 per person. While provinces, including Ontario, have agreed to fund Trikafta, these funding announcements do not always equal access for all who could benefit from the drug. Some jurisdictions have restrictions on access and complex reimbursement formulas. CF Canada is advocating for improved access to this transformational drug for all who could benefit from it. Well, that's quite a story, isn't it? And imagine what the founders of the Robbie would think about their little event that grew and the impact it would have on tens of thousands of people in the soccer community and on cystic fibrosis. To finish, I have a couple of requests. First, the Robbie is always looking for partners who can provide financial support in return for an association with an event with an impeccable reputation with direct exposure to 25,000 participants each year. If you have ideas or leads, please send them along to Marg, who can forward them to me. And second, Cystic Fibrosis Canada still has much work to do. People who want to help can find information at cysticfibrosis.ca to join when there are calls for advocacy messages to be shared with the broader community. Jim, questions?
Thanks,
Discussions?
Mike. Thanks, Mike. Let's just hold off on the questions until we're finished, Barb, and then we'll come back to you as well as Barb. Can you stay for the rest of the evening, Mike?
I could, yes, sure.
Okay. So thank you, Mike. That's fascinating. It's just I'm surprised I haven't. I don't have kids in soccer, so my kids are involved in many other things. So thanks so much for explaining what the Robbie is, and